Carnatic Wars. Alright. So it is after Carnatic Wars. It is after Carnatic Wars. Alright. The East India Company. It is after Carnatic Wars. It is East India Company has strengthened and consolidated their positions in India. So in this Carnatic Wars, East India Company were successful. They were successful in defeating the French armies. Alright, they were successful in defeating French armies. Alright, remember, it is not East India Company or it is not Britishers who came to India. Even before Britishers, you know that, even before Britishers, there were other Europeans. There were other Europeans who came to India and established their factories. So Britishers are not the first one to start their factories. Right? So even before the Britishers, right? French have come, Portuguese, Dutch, French. Alright, so they have come to India, they have established their factories and they had their commercial activities within India. And you know that the sea route to India was found by Portuguese. Right, it was who? Vasco da Gama. It is Vasco da Gama who has found sea route to India. And it is after this sea route, right, almost all every European power, they had showed their interest in India. But it is these people, it is these countries, all right, who have established their factories, their forts in India. All right. So though almost all Portuguese, Dutch, France and Britishers have come, it was Britishers who have occupied, who have settled in India. Right. So they were successful in defeating these French armies in Carnatic Wars. So what is this Carnatic Wars? Who are the what you call personalities? Right. Who are the personalities involved in this Carnatic Wars? Who are the native Indian rulers? Right. So if you take this Carnatic Wars, it is not just between British and France. It is not just between British and France. It is, we also see involvement of native Indian rulers. We also see involvement of native Indian rulers, particularly Mysore and Hyderabad. Alright, it is Mysore and Hyderabad. Alright, so we see involvement. So in your history part, in the history part, you will come to know all these personalities. Who are that native Indian rulers? Who are the rulers of Mysore and Hyderabad? Who are the personalities in French armies? And who are the personalities in East India Company, right, who fought this Carnatic Wars. But here, as of now, I will give one personality, that is the name of Robert Clive. Right. So he was a British captain. He was the captain of the British Army who was successful in overthrowing, who was successful in defeating French armies. So East India Company could establish itself. East India Company could establish and consolidate itself because of Robert Clive. It is because of Robert Clive. So Robert Clive is always regarded as hero of East India Company, hero of Arcot. He is called as hero of Arcot. So where is Arcot? It is a place in Chennai and in Tamil Nadu today. Alright. So it is placed near to Arcot. So Arcot is a place. It is a place in Tamil Nadu where the entire Carnatic Wars fought. So it is the epicenter, or it is the important center. It is the important centers in Carnatic Wars. Right. You will come to know again this in history part, particularly in the what you call modern India part. Right? Main important place is Arcot. Alright. So if you take this Arcot was first under the control of French armies. So Robert Clive has defeated these French armies, right, and he secured, right, he established the control of East India Company on Arcot region. Alright, that is the reason why he is called as hero of Arcot. Alright, another important achievement of this Robert Clive is it is he who has defeated the Nawab of Bengal, alright, and strengthened East India Company in Bengal presidency. In the previous class I was saying that, right, this East India Company has established their factories in western part, that is in Surat, in southern part, and they went to eastern part, that is in Bengal. So they had their factories in Bengal also. So it was the defeat of rulers of Bengal. It was the defeat of Nawab of Bengal, alright, Sirajud-Dowlah, alright. It was defeat of Sirajud-Dowlah, alright, by Robert Clive. He belongs to Bengal. I was showing you Bengal Nawab of Bengal. It is Nawab of Bengal. Alright. So it was in Battle of Plassey. It was in Battle of Plassey. Alright. So which was fought in 1757. So this is very important. Battle of Plassey is very important, right? Which was fought in 1757. This year is also important. So it was in this battle. Alright. The Bengal Nawab was defeated and killed by Robert Clive. The army under Robert Clive. Alright. So why Robert Clive is regarded as hero of East India Company? What is the reason? What is the reason for regarding Robert Clive as the hero of East India Company? This is the reason. Right. He has defeated French armies in Carnatic wars and he has secured Arcot. He has defeated Bengal rulers and secured what you call Calcutta. Right. He has strengthened the position of East India Company in Calcutta. Alright. So this is what done. So that is the reason why he is called as hero of East India Company. That means without Robert Clive, we cannot imagine. Without Robert Clive, we cannot imagine East India Company. Without Robert Clive, East India Company could not strengthen itself, could not get established itself in India. Alright. So that Robert Clive is the important personality in the entire history of East India Company. Alright. So now this is one battle. Another battle is what you call Battle of Buxar. It is Battle of Buxar, which was fought in 1764. Battle of Buxar was fought in 1764 between Mir Qasim and the French armies again. The British armies. It is the combined armies of Bengal and Mughal rulers. That means in this Battle of Buxar, it is not just Bengal Nawab, it is not just the armies, the forces of Bengal, but even the force of Mughals also participated. So even we see participation of the Mughal armies in the Battle of Buxar, but it was mainly led by Mir Qasim. It was mainly led by Mir Qasim. Alright. So Mir Qasim was the important personality. Alright. Again, alright, in this battle of Buxar, the combined force of Bengal and Mughals were defeated, which ultimately gave Diwani rights to East India Company. So after this battle of Buxar, the important outcome of this battle of Buxar is granting of Diwani rights. Granting of Diwani rights to East India Company. Granting of Diwani rights to East India Company. And these rights were given in 1765. So East India Company has acquired these rights in 1765. Alright. So now you have seen some years: 1757, 1764, 1765. 1757 is known for Battle of Plassey, 1764 is known for Battle of Buxar, 1765 is known for Diwani rights. Alright. So Battle of Plassey was between Siraj-ud-Dawla and East India Company. Battle of Buxar is between the combined armies under Mir Qasim and East India Company. Alright. So there is another important event that I want to explain now. That is the event of Black Hole Tragedy. So why East India Company fought with Siraj-ud-Dawla? What is the reason? What is the reason for the clashes between East India Company and Bengal Nawabs? So why Bengal Nawabs fought with East India Company? What we have seen is, we have seen two wars. Why these two battles were fought? What is the reason for fighting these two battles? ఇప్పుడైతే మీకు రెండు బ్యాటిల్స్ జరిగినాయని తెలుసు కదా. అసలు రెండు బ్యాటిల్స్ ఎందుకు జరిగినాయి? వాట్ ఈస్ ద రీజన్ ఫర్ దిస్ టూ బ్యాటిల్స్? Misuse of what you call the rights given to them, right? So East India Company was misusing their privileges, misusing their rights. So whatever right that were given by the Mughal rulers, right, they went beyond what is allowed them, right? So they were not paying taxes, right? And they were without the permission of Bengal Nawabs. They were involved in private trade. So this has angered the Bengal Nawab. Siraj-ud-Dawla angered because of this unauthorized activities of East India Company, right? Misuse of privileges by East India Company. And what he has done is, Siraj-ud-Dawla has confined, he has detained, right, the soldiers of East India Company in a single room, a room without having a room which has no ventilation in it. Right. So Siraj-ud-Dawla has done one thing, that is, he has detained. So this detention, he has detained the soldiers of East India Company in Fort Williams. Alright. So he has detained this, the issues about Fort Williams. Fort, the name antam, Kota. Alright. So there are St. George Fort. All these forts are again important for exam. Right. So Siraj-ud-Dawla has detained the soldiers of East India Company. So nearly 127 soldiers. Nearly 127 soldiers were detained in a single room without any ventilation. And because of this, it is believed that, right, almost all the soldiers have died because of the suffocation. Right, it is believed that, right, the East India Company soldiers, they lost their life because of this detention without any ventilation. So this incident is called as Black Hole Tragedy. It is called as black hole tragedy. It is called as black hole tragedy. All right. So what is this black hole tragedy is? As I said, so because of this black hole tragedy, right, the East India Company got angered and an army was sent under the leadership of Robert Clive, right? So because of this incident, armies under Robert Clive. So remember, Robert Clive was in Arcot, he was in Tamil Nadu, right? So he was ordered to move to Bengal. He was ordered to move to Bengal and take action against the Nawab of Bengal. Alright. So Robert Clive, he has arrived in Bengal and with the support of Mir Zafar, alright, Robert Clive was successful in defeating and killing Siraj-ud-Dawla. Right. With the support of Mir Zafar, Robert Clive was successful in defeat and killing of Siraj-ud-Dawla. Alright. Now who is this Mir Zafar? A new character again. Who is this Mir Zafar? He is Katappa of what do you call Siraj-ud-Dawla. Who is Katappa? I think you know about Bahubali. You are well aware about Bahubali. Army General. He was the Mir Zafar. Mir Zafar is Army General in the rule of Siraj-ud-Dawla. He was the Army General of Siraj-ud-Dawla. That means this Army General of Bengal, he has joined hands with Robert Clive. That means Robert Clive has lured Mir Zafar. The name antam. Luring ante emantam Telugulo? Luring, L-U-R-I-N-G. ఆశ పెట్టడం, ఆశ చూపించి లొంగ తీసుకోవడం. రైట్. సో అంటే సిరాజుద్దౌలాకు సంబంధించిన గవర్నర్ జనరల్ని ఆర్మీ జనరల్ని రైట్ దాన్ని ఏమంటాం ఆశ చూపించి లొంగ తీసుకుంటాడు. అంటే నాట్ బ్రైబింగ్. రైట్. దేర్ వాజ్ అ సీక్రెట్ అగ్రిమెంట్ మేడ్ బిట్వీన్ మీర్ జఫర్ అండ్ వాట్ యు కాల్ రాబర్ట్ క్లైవ్. So here, that is what. That means the agreement was, if Mir Zafar joins hands with Robert Clive promises to make Mir Zafar as the Nawab of Bengal after death of Siraj-ud-Dawla. Alright. So the understanding between Robert Clive and Mir Zafar was, here Mir Zafar was promised to be made as Nawab of Bengal after the battle or after the fight. Obviously, Mir Zafar has joined hands with Robert Clive and they have killed Siraj-ud-Dawla. So according to agreement, Mir Zafar is made as Nawab. But Mir Zafar was treated as a puppet. Now he is a puppet. Alright? Oka keelubam ante. He was just a puppet in the hands of East India Company. He was not respected. Alright? So there was complete domination. There was complete domination of East India Company. And most importantly, after Mir Zafar being appointed as the Nawab of Bengal, East India Company stopped paying taxes to Bengal Nawabs. According to agreement, they should pay taxes. They stopped paying taxes to what you call Bengal. Right? And what you call this East India Company, the officials of East India Company, they started showing ill treatment to the Bengal Nawabs. That is the reason why Mir Qasim, the son of Mir Zafar, right, he wanted to control this East India Company. He wanted to teach East India Company a lesson. Right? Mir Qasim, who fought this battle of Buxar in 1764, is a son of Mir Zafar. So when Mir Qasim became the Nawab of Bengal, right, he wanted to control, he wanted to take action against East India Company, and that is the reason why with the help of the Mughal armies, right, Mir Qasim has fought, he had a fight with the East India Company, which is this battle or this fight was held in Buxar, right? Buxar is a place, right? Even today we have the district of Buxar in Bihar, right? It is a part of Bihar, right? So it is this battle or this fight came to be known as Battle of Buxar. The outcome of this Battle of Buxar is, right, the Bengal Nawabs along with the Mughal forces, they lost this battle. That means what? The supremacy of East India Company has increased because of this Battle of Buxar, because of the losses in Battle of Buxar, right? The pride of Bengal and the Mughal Nawabs has totally come down. ఇలా వీళ్ళు ఓడిపోకపోయి ఉంటే ఈస్ట్ ఇండియా కంపెనీ తగ్గుండేది. కానీ ఇక్కడ ఓడిపోయింది ఎవరు? బెంగాల్ నవాబ్స్ ఓడిపోయింది, ఇండియన్ రూలర్స్ ఓడిపోయింది. కాబట్టి ఏమైంది? డామినేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఈస్ట్ ఇండియా కంపెనీ హ్యాస్ ఇంక్రీస్డ్. ద డామినేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఈస్ట్ ఇండియా కంపెనీ హ్యాస్ ఇంక్రీస్డ్. దిస్ ఈజ్ ద బిగ్గెస్ట్ డ్రాబ్యాక్, బికాస్ ఆఫ్ విచ్, రైట్, ఈస్ట్ ఇండియా కంపెనీ హ్యాస్ అక్వైర్డ్ మోర్ రైట్స్ ఫ్రమ్ ఇండియన్స్. బ్యాటిల్ ఆఫ్ బక్సర్ తర్వాత వాళ్ళ పవర్, వాళ్ళ అథారిటీ, వాళ్ళ ప్రెస్టీజ్ పెరిగిపోయింది. రైట్, అంటే దే హ్యావ్ బికమ్ అ డామినెంట్ కంపెనీ. దేర్ ఆర్మీస్ హ్యావ్ బికమ్ అ డామినెంట్ ఫోర్స్ ఇన్ ఇండియా. రైట్, ద మెయిన్ అవుట్కమ్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ బ్యాటిల్ ఆఫ్ బక్సర్ ఈస్ గ్రాంటింగ్ ఆఫ్ దివానీ రైట్స్. ఇట్ ఈస్ granting of Diwani rights. Diwani rights were granted. Diwani rights were granted. Alright. Diwani rights were granted to the East India Company in 1765. It was in 17. No? It is in Bengal. It is Bengal. Every fight or every war, it is always named after the what you call place. Right? The place where this battle was held. Right? Where this Mahabharat took place, the fight between Pandavas and Kauravas. మహాభారత్ ఫైట్. మహాభారత్ తెలుసా? విన్నారా? దాంట్లో పాండవులు ఉంటారు, కౌరవులు ఉంటారా? రైట్, ఉంటారు కదా. ఈ క్యారెక్టర్స్ అయితే మీకు తెలుసు కదా. ఈ ఫైట్ ఎక్కడ జరిగింది? మన దేశంలోనే జరిగింది. మన దేశంలో ఎక్కడ జరిగింది చెప్పు? నియర్ ఆగ్రా. కురుక్షేత్ర యుద్ధం అంటే ఏంటిది? కురుక్షేత్ర యుద్ధం అంటే ఏంటిది? అదే మహాభారత యుద్ధం. కురుక్షేత్ర అంటే ఏంటిది? వాట్ యు మీన్ బై కురుక్షేత్ర? ఇట్ ఈస్ అ నేమ్ ఆఫ్ ప్లేస్. ఇట్ ఈస్ నియర్ టు ఢిల్లీ, హర్యానాలో ఉంటుంది మీకు. కురుక్షేత్ర, యూనివర్సిటీ ఆఫ్ కురుక్షేత్ర, ఎన్ఐటి కురుక్షేత్ర, IIIT కురుక్షేత్ర. రైట్, సో కురుక్షేత్ర అనేది ఒక ప్లేస్. రైట్, పానిపట్ అగైన్ ఒక ప్లేస్ పేరు అది. అంటే ఏ యుద్ధమైనా సరే, ఎనీ వార్, ఇట్ ఈస్ నేమ్డ్ ఆఫ్టర్ దట్ ప్లేస్. రైట్, అర్థమైందమ్మా? సో వాట్ యు మీన్ బై దిస్ దివానీ రైట్స్? వాట్ ఆర్ దివానీ రైట్స్? What do you mean by Diwani rights? Alright, so what was acquired by East India Company after this Diwani rights? Alright, as I was saying, so by these Diwani rights, taxation powers were given to East India Company. That is, now they can impose taxes. Collecting revenues. Alright. Not only this, the power to adjudicate civil disputes. The power to adjudicate civil disputes. Right? Civil disputes involving Europeans. civil disputes involving Europeans. Alright, so these are the powers that East India Company has acquired. Alright, these are the powers that were given to East India Company. So mainly it is about taxation powers and collection of revenues. So that means what? East India Company came to India for the purpose of establishing factories and having trade. Now what they are doing? Now they had revenue powers. They acquired revenue power. It means they have acquired the power to impose and collect taxes. Imposing of taxes and collecting of taxes. They can have trade with Indians now. Right? So this Diwani rights, these Diwani rights has increased the power of East India Company, but along with power, there was also increased corruption within the East India Company. Right? Increased corruption in East India Company, particularly the company officials. The company officials, they were engaged, the company officials were engaged in private trade. They were engaged in private trade, that is, alright, they started having their own trade relations with Indians. Trade relations with Indians, which is outside of, right, which is outside of East India Company. That is, without involving East India Company. Without involving East India Company, the company officials, the officials of East India Company, they established trade links with the local farmers, local businessmen, local traders of India. అంటే ఈస్ట్ ఇండియా కంపెనీకి సంబంధం లేకుండా కంపెనీకి సంబంధించిన అఫీషియల్సే సొంతంగా ట్రేడ్ స్టార్ట్ చేయడం. మరి ఇట్ ఈస్ అగేన్స్ట్ ఈస్ట్ ఇండియా కంపెనీ కదా, అవునా కదా? ఇప్పుడు నా దగ్గర పనిచేసే ఫ్యాకల్టీ నాకు తెలియకుండా మీతో సపరేట్ క్లాస్ చెప్పి డబ్బులు తీసుకుని క్లాస్ చెప్పింది అనుకోండి, డోంట్ థింక్ ఇట్ హ్యాస్ వయలేషన్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్, రైట్? నార్మల్లీ వీ సీ దిస్ ఇన్ ఎవ్రీ స్కూల్ టీచర్స్ హ్యావింగ్ ప్రైవేట్ ట్యూషన్స్ విత్ ద సేమ్ స్కూల్ స్టూడెంట్స్. అంటే స్కూల్లో ఫీజు తీసుకుంటారు, మళ్ళీ సపరేట్ ఫీజు అంటే ట్యూషన్ ఫీజు కలెక్ట్ చేయడం, రైట్? ఇట్ ఈస్ సేమ్ లైక్ దట్. The officials of East India Company, they were engaged in unauthorized trade. That is what the form of corruption. They have misused their power, they have misused their position. So by using the power and position of East India Company, personally they had trade relations, which is nothing but a corrupt practice. So because of these issues, because of these practices, right, the British government, because of these practices, the British government wanted to impose restrictions, alright? So till from 1609 to 1772, British government was not involved in the activities of East India Company. Never British government got involved. Never British government got involved in activities of East India Company. But because of this increased corrupt practices, because of misuse of power and authority by East India Company officials, right, the British government, the Queen, the government, right, they started regulating the activities of East India Company. They started regulating the activities of East India Company. So these regulations are called as regulatory acts. Alright, so from 1773 to 1853, from 1773 to 1853, right, periodically, that is for every 20 years, right, regulations were imposed. For every 20 years, regulations were imposed on For every 20 years, regulations were imposed on East India Company, and these regulations are imposed in the form of charters. These regulations are in the form of charters issued by Queen. Charters means the royal orders. Simply it is a written document, right? Literally speaking, it is a written document. Charter means written documents. Charter means it is written documents. Alright. So periodically these orders are passed. Periodically, right, charters are issued. Alright. So regulations are in the form of charters. Charters means what? They are the written documents, are nothing but the orders issued by Queen. Alright. These are the orders issued by Queen. Alright. అంటే ప్రతి 20 సంవత్సరాలకు ఒకసారి రైట్ మార్పులు తీసుకొస్తూ వచ్చింది. రైట్. ఆ మార్పులు ఎలా తీసుకొచ్చింటే ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ ఓరల్ ఇన్స్ట్రక్షన్స్, ఇట్ ఈస్ ది రిటర్న్ ఇన్స్ట్రక్షన్స్. ఎనీ రిటర్న్ ఇన్స్ట్రక్షన్ ఆర్ ఎనీ రిటర్న్ లా ఇట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ చార్టర్. చార్టర్ మీన్స్ రిటర్న్ ఇన్స్ట్రక్షన్స్ ఆర్ సింప్లీ రిటర్న్ డాక్యుమెంట్. Yes. See, what I said is the officials of East India Company. The officials of East India Company, without involving East India Company, they were engaged in private trade. It is not members outside of East India Company. The same company officials, right? It is nothing but unauthorized. Unauthorized. That is what corruption. The broader word is corruption, corrupt practices. So it is, again we have different meanings. The broader word that we can use is corrupt practices. It can be misuse of power, it can be misuse of authority, misuse of office. Alright. So what you call it is this kind of misuse. Alright. So there is a specific meaning for malpractice, maladministration, misfeasance, malfeasance. So technically they are different words. Alright. Alright. So for every 20 years, this is what you call regulations were made. For every 20 years, regulations were made to control the activities of East India Company. Alright. And it is these regulations, it is this charter acts, which have become the basis of framing of Indian Constitution. So we can say that these regulations are charter acts as the basis of Indian Constitution, right? Because they had an impact on framing of Indian Constitution. So what is our topic of the class? What we are actually discussing? Making of Indian Constitution, the historical background of Indian Constitution. So what is the stepping stone, what is the first step that was taken to frame Indian Constitution? What is the first step that is taken to make to frame Indian Constitution? It is what you call framing of this charter acts or passing of charter acts. And the first such act that was passed is Regulation Act of 1773. The first such act is, it is Regulation Act of 1773. Regulation Act of 1773. So this was the first act. Alright. You can also call it as Charter Act of 1773. So what is these regulations? So first let me explain the important features of this 1773 Act. Alright, I'll explain all the important features of 1773 Act, then we'll have an analysis of this 1773 Act. Alright, so for the first time, the office of Governor General. The office of Governor General was created. For the first time, the office of Governor General was created. Right? So this is one thing. Governor General of Bengal. The office of Governor General of Bengal was created. Second one, to assist this Governor General, an executive council was appointed. Alright, creation of an executive council. Creation of an executive council. The purpose of this executive council is to assist Governor General both in executive as well as legislative functions. It is to assist both in executive and legislative functions. This is another thing. Third one, for the first time, a Supreme Court was created. Alright, the first time a Supreme Court was created. Alright, a Supreme Court with seat of power at Calcutta. A Supreme Court with seat of power at Calcutta. Alright. Remember, Calcutta was seat of power of not only East India Company, but even for British Indian government till 1911. That means we can regard Calcutta as India's first capital. Later, it was shifted to Delhi in the year 1911. It was in the year 1911. You see, shift of capital from Calcutta to Delhi. Shift of capital from Calcutta to Delhi in 1911. Okay. Shifted to Delhi. And this year of 1911 is very, very important for exam. So in the coming classes, in the future classes, you will come to know, and mostly in the history part, in India's freedom struggle, you will come to know the importance of 1911. So don't forget this year of 1911. Okay. Alright. So this is one thing. Next. Alright. Another most important point is, alright, consequence of No, that is what I am saying. You should wait till your history part comes. The reason for shifting this capital. Obviously, there might be some reasons. Without reason, there won't be any shift. Alright? One reason, the growing nationalist activities in Calcutta. Alright? So, Calcutta is a hub of all the nationalist activities. And not just nationalist activities, even revolutionary terrorism, revolutionary activities were more in Calcutta. So Calcutta is always the hotbed. Calcutta is always the hotbed in India's freedom struggle. Alright? Alright? So, now by this 1773 Act, alright, by the 1773 Act, it was mandated to have an annual report. It was mandated to have annual report on civil, military, revenue and commercial activities. And on the civil activities, on the military activities, on the revenue activities as well as commercial activities of the company. That is, the company officials are required to submit an annual report on civil administration, military administration, revenue administration and commercial activities of the company. So this is the mandate. This is the mandate given. So it is mandatory. Civil, military, civil administration, military administration, revenue administration and commercial activities. So the court of directors of East India Company, the court of directors of East India Company, they are required to submit an annual report. They are required to submit an annual report, right, to the British government on these activities. So it is mandatory. That means what? Now British government will have a supervision on the functioning of East India Company. So these annual reports are used to have control over the activities of East India Company. They are used for having control over the activities of East India Company. Alright. So this is the importance. So now let me have, so these are the important provisions of 1773 Act. Alright. I have just given the facts, not an analysis. Let us talk about these in detail. Let me talk about this in detail. Alright. If we take the first one, alright, appointment of Governor General. The first person to be appointed as Governor General of Bengal is Lord Warren Hastings. You all know about it. It was Lord Warren Hastings. It was Lord Warren Hastings who was the first person to be appointed as Governor General of Bengal. Remember, if you take this East India Company had three important centers. One is Bombay, Madras and Bengal. So they were made as their presidencies. So we have Bombay Presidency, Madras Presidency and Bengal Presidency. And every presidency has their own governors. That is, there is a governor for Bengal, governor for Bombay and governor for Madras. Alright. Not only governors, but also there is an institution called as Court of Directors. Right? Court of Directors. There is an institution called as Court of Directors. Right? So normally all these presidencies are governed by governor with the help of Court of Directors. Alright. Now by 1773 what was done is the Governor of Bengal was made as Governor General of Bengal. The Governor of Bengal was made as Governor General of Bengal. Remember, it is only Governor of Bengal, not for Bombay and Madras. Right? It is only the Governor of Bengal was made as Governor General of Bengal. Alright. So this is one thing. But this Governor General of Bengal was given the power to supervise both Bombay and Madras Presidency. Alright. So this Governor General of Bengal can exercise authority over Bombay and Madras. Now, can we say that this 1773 Act led to domination of Bengal over Bombay and Madras? Yes or no? Can we say that it led to subordination of Madras and Bombay to Bengal? Obviously. Alright. So this has led, so this 1773 Act, started, the 1773 Act started subordination. Subordination of whom? Subordination of Bombay and Madras, right? Subordination of Bombay and Madras. All right. So this is one thing. All right. And I was saying that there was an executive council created. There was an executive council created. All right. The purpose of this executive council was to assist Governor General both in executive and legislative functions. Assisting Governor General both in executive and legislative functions. Okay. Now what do you mean by executive functions? What do you mean by executive functions? Do you have idea about the meaning of these two words, executive and legislative? No. So let me explain. So if you take this executive functions, executive means, all right, it is that branch of the state that is meant for implementation. What do you mean by execution? What do you mean by execution? It is act, it is implementing or exactly acting, right? So execution and implementation of what? Implementation of decisions, implementation of laws, implementation of rules, all right? So this executive branch, right? Remember, executive functions or executive branch, they are normally involved in implementation and execution of laws, rules or any kind of decisions made. Any kind of decisions made. Alright? Remember, you take any nation. You take any nation. Right? Every nation has 3 branches. Every nation has 3 branches. Every country has 3 branches. One is legislative branch. Second one is executive branch. And third one is judicial branch. So these are 3 branches of a nation: legislature, executive and judiciary. Alright? So in 1773, Executive Council was created to assist Governor General both in executive functions, that is in implementation, as well as in legislative functions. So what do you mean by legislative functions? What are legislative functions? What are legislative functions? Alright? So if you take this legislative functions, it means law making. Alright? Legislative means laws. It is about law making functions. Law making function. Law making function or law making laws made. So legislature, right, is involved in all these legislative functions. So legislature is an institution. The best example of legislature is Parliament. You all know about Parliament, right? So Parliament is an example of legislature. And the purpose of Parliament is, what Parliament does? It makes laws, right? So legislative function means it is about law making function, right? The place where laws are made are called as legislature, right? So this is about legislative and executive functions. So one is involved in law making and the other one is involved in law implementation. Alright? The Executive Council is involved in assisting Governor General who will make laws. It is the Governor General who will make the laws. But in this law making function, who will assist Governor General? It is this executive council. పేరుకు మాత్రమే ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్ కౌన్సిల్, కానీ లా మేకింగ్ ఫంక్షన్లో యాజ్ వెల్ యాజ్ లా ఇంప్లిమెంటేషన్ ఫంక్షన్లో, బోత్ ఇన్ మేకింగ్ యాజ్ వెల్ యాజ్ ఇంప్లిమెంటేషన్, రైట్, ది గవర్నర్ జనరల్ ఈజ్ అసిస్టెడ్, రైట్. And all these members of executive council, so executive council is a 4-member body. It is a 4-member body, and all these 4 members are Europeans. So no Indians are given a place. No Indians are given a place in this administration. Indians have no place in the administration. It is totally Europeans. It is totally the Britishers, right? All these 4 members are Europeans, right? So this what about executive council. So now you have come to know what is executive function, what is legislative function, right? So in the coming classes, as the time passes, you will learn more about this. The best example of executive branch is government. Government is the example of executive branch. Parliament is example of legislature. Parliament is example of legislature, whereas government is the example of executive. అర్థమైందా? గవర్నమెంట్ అంటే ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్, పార్లమెంట్ అంటే లెజిస్లేచర్. పార్లమెంట్ ఏం చేస్తుంది? లా మేకింగ్. గవర్నమెంట్ ఏం చేస్తుంది? ఇంప్లిమెంటేషన్. ఏదైతే లాస్ పార్లమెంట్ చేస్తుందో వాటిని ఇంప్లిమెంట్ చేయడమే గవర్నమెంట్ ఫంక్షన్, రైట్. సో now in today's class, what you have learnt is, right, what is Battle of Plassey, what is Battle of Buxar, what is Diwani rights, right, the changes brought by 1773 Act, that is the 4 points: appointment of Governor General, Executive Council, Supreme Court, and submission of annual report, right. So this is what been brought by 1773 Act, right. So for now I'll stop the class on this point. In tomorrow's class I'll complete this what you call analysis of 1773, and I will discuss the 1784 Act, the 1793 as well as 1813 Acts, right. So mostly in tomorrow's class I'll complete up to 1813, alright. So this what for today's class. And first thing, హ్యావ్ యూ అండర్స్టూడ్ ఆర్ నాట్? అర్థమవుతుందా? రైట్. మీరు తెలుగు మీడియం కాబట్టి కొంచెం ఇబ్బంది ఉంటుంది ఫస్ట్ టైం. మీరు కొన్ని కొత్త పదాలు వినడము, కొత్త పదాలు చూడడము, రైట్. సో మీకు ఇబ్బంది అనిపిస్తే క్లాస్ అయిపోయినాక ఒకసారి రండి, చెప్తాను మీకు, రైట్. ఆ తెలుగులో బట్ అంటే నాకు ఎగ్జాక్ట్ తెలుగు టెక్నాలజీ రాదు. ఎగ్జాక్ట్లీ ఐ డోంట్ నో ది టెక్నికల్ వర్డ్స్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ థింగ్ ఇన్ తెలుగు, రైట్. సో but I can convey the meaning, alright. అర్థమవుతుందా? alright. So this is what my speed. So whether are you comfortable with the speed of discussion, whether I am going fast? ఖచ్చితంగా చెప్తానమ్మా. అందుకనే కదా బేసికల్ వాట్ ఈజ్ లెజిస్లేచర్, వాట్ ఈజ్ ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్, ఇవన్నీ బేసిక్ థింగ్స్ అన్నట్టు. అంటే అలాంటివి ఇవి కూడా అంటే చాలా మటుకు చాలా ఇష్యూలు చెప్పరు. ఇవన్నీ చెప్పాల్సిన అవసరం కూడా లేదు, కానీ చాలామందికి మీనింగ్స్ కూడా తెలియదు. పీపుల్ డోంట్ నో ద మీనింగ్స్ ఆఫ్ వాట్ ఈజ్ లెజిస్లేచర్, వాట్ ఈజ్ ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్. వీ కీప్ ఆన్ యూజింగ్ దీస్ వర్డ్స్ బట్ వీ డోంట్ నో ది ఎగ్జాక్ట్ మీనింగ్స్ ఆఫ్ దీస్ వర్డ్స్. ప్రతి పదం మీకు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తాను, బికాస్ అన్లెస్ యూ హ్యావ్ ఎ క్లారిటీ ఆన్ ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీ వర్డ్, అన్లెస్ యూ హ్యావ్ ఎ క్లారిటీ ఆన్ టెర్మినాలజీ, there is I think it will be difficult to clear the exam, alright. So for now it's of the class here, we'll meet in tomorrow's class, alright.